Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast, coming to you from pristineauction.com studios with your hosts, Jake Ciely, Chris Meaney, and Joe Holka.
Welcome, Foot Clan. It is week 13 DFS for the rest of us. It is the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast. As a reminder, before we even get rolling, well, first of all, make sure you're following us at Chris Meaney for Chris, at Joe Holka for Joe, at All in Kid for myself. And make sure you're also part of the DFS Pass over on the Footballers website, which you can put in the code podcast and get 10% off to get all the articles, all the goodness, everything we're talking about, and more, because my article's in there, Chris is in there, and other people's are in there to get you so much advice. And we love I have to say, guys, I love seeing the tweets where people are like, thank you, I won money. I mean, part of me is like, send me 10% of the rake there, but at the same time, I legitimately do love seeing people win money over the weekends.
That's what it's all about. Absolutely. That's what we're here for. Well, I want people to win. And this is the time of the year, unfortunately, for some people, their season-long leagues are basically over. If they don't win, you're out. So hopefully we pull in some more people and we're able to call some plays and win some people some money.
Yeah, I always feel good about the weeks where people actually give us some nice feedback. It's those weeks where the mentions just blow up in the other direction that I guess are a little bit more frustrating. But it's been a lot more good than bad, at least recently for sure.
I would even say it's like the mention is like when you don't get mentioned at all, period. Then it's kind of like, did nobody win anything this week? Like, what happened? Everybody okay? But look, that's what we're here for. Hopefully we do that for week 13. So as always, let's kick things off with talking some cash plays for you guys.
Straight cash, homie.
All right, Joe, coming to you first. DraftKings. It's impossible this week. There is no way you're getting Christian McCaffrey in your lineup, is there?
Yeah, I'm just going to give everyone permission again to play Christian McCaffrey for the 10th week in a row, I think. No,
you can't.
You can't make it work. You literally can't make it work. No, I don't know. I think that there's still enough pricing kind of inefficiencies here. I guess we've talked about this the last couple of weeks about how much harder it has been to build lineups in particular over on DraftKings, but thankfully we did get a little bit of value to open up last week. I think this could be another week like that where we end up getting on some of these cheaper wide receivers, which we'll talk about. But running back, I still think it's the same guys at the top. There's really not much more analysis as far as the Christian McCaffrey thing. Like he's 10-5 on DraftKings, he's 11K on FanDuel. I think this spot against Washington still certainly makes some sense to go back to this guy. You can project him for the most touches on the entire slate. Washington is a team that will slow down the pace a little bit, so that's something to, I guess, monitor as we go through here. But Washington in particular is a team that's really poor against the short area passing game. So, I mean, I just think that McCaffrey could end up eating again in this spot. He is so much more expensive than any other running back on the slate. So what are you guys doing with him versus like trying to prioritize some of these wide receivers?
So, Chris, you know this because we said it, well, Joe, before we came on the show. I found a way to make it work on FanDuel.
It's a little bit easier. I mean, if you just plug them in on FanDuel, you have $6,000, per average player to spend the rest of the way. That's doable. You can get a solid lineup over there on FanDuel with that. And then on DK, it's 4.9 once you plug in McCaffrey. So it's really tough. Yeah, I mean, you got to be punting on defense. You're going to have to punt the tight end position, and you're going to have to take a shot on, definitely a quarterback. We'll get into a couple of that. Hodges, maybe Andy Dalton. I don't know. You're going to have to get a little wild with your lineup. Maybe you go Dalton, Auden Tate stack or something silly like that. You're going to have to get creative. Absolutely. I mean, Benny Snell, 4.7. Do you really want to roll that guy out there? So you'll have to take some. It's definitely easier to do on FanDuel, I will say that, but it's so tough because he's, as Joe talked about, I mean, he's out of all the backs here this week. I mean, we don't even know what the status of Barkley. Kamara's not playing. Zeke's not playing. When I say I don't know the status of Barkley, I just don't know what I'm not confident rolling him out. I mean, his price is 7.4, so it's clearly CMC is the number one option. If you can find a way to do it, go for it. But it's tough in cash, Jake, because you're going to have to roll out these scrubs. And if you're a cash game player, it doesn't give you a good balance to roll him out.
No, and I think that's why we're not talking tournament right now, but I think that's why Christian McCaffrey makes sense in tournaments, is because it's so impossible to do it that most people are just going to finally stay away. and you're going to have to hit. I wouldn't do this. Is something you talk about a lot, Joe. Is like, one out of so many lineups or whatever. I might barely own Christian McCaffrey. Even tournament, it might be like 10%, like 1 out of 10, just because you're going to have to hit on so many. Like you're taking, and this is for everybody out there, and you can talk to this too, Joe and Chris, about roster construction. Is when you go and you just mentioned, was it 4,900, Chris? Yeah. When you have to punt essentially quarterback and tight end and 2 wide receiver spots, and your second running back becomes a question. It goes from, all right, I got to hit on some guys that look like good plays, and I have to hit on 2. Now you have to hit on like 4, and you're hitting on 4 of guys who only hit like 10% of the time. So do the simple math for everybody out there. There's been math of, times. Now we're talking about you probably have like a 2% chance of doing well.
Yeah, I guess the problem with last week, even though like CMC still gets his normal 30 points, but if you played CMC, you're basically down to some of these scrub running backs like you talked about as well. You're probably playing Miles Sanders. You're probably playing Phillip Lindsay to like make your roster work. So like, yeah, he got there probably from a raw points perspective, but like the teams that had like the Derrick Henrys last week or that had Leonard Fournette, these running backs that you just couldn't really get up to with the CMC build, like that's, I guess, what we have to start to consider a little bit in roster construction. And I'm definitely like Christian McCaffrey's biggest fan, but I think that it's going to come a point, like you guys have been saying, like it depends on the rest of the salaries as well, not just how much of a good play he is. And I think there were weeks earlier in the season where even if he was priced at 10K, you easily could have made it work with value. It's been tougher when everyone else has been priced up recently. So I do think that things are changing, at least a little bit on that side of things.
All right. So then who are you looking at elsewise, Chris? Elsewise?
Yeah,
is that a word?
Yeah, we'll use it. It's a special week. Lev Bell, he's been pretty frustrating, but this is a good spot against the Bengals. Nobody's given up more rushing yards than Cincinnati this season, and he's been a little bit more involved through the air. That's what I like to see. Last week, 5 catches, 4 catches in week 10. He had 8 grabs in week 9. So he's been involved through the air. It hasn't been the Lev Bell of old, but he's coming off a game where he had over 4.0 yards per carry, and you can only say that twice for Lev Bell so far this season. So
a good thing.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's completely not the same upside as when he was a Steeler, but I think in terms of just pricing, he's on both sites actually. On FanDuel and DraftKings, I think he's decent in there at 7-2. So that's a running back that I'm looking at. But again, on DK, you're not going to be able to pair one of these top tier backs with McCaffrey. It's just there's no way in heck you can do it.
Tough to get there. I guess you guys probably aren't going to like this one because of the matchup, but Lenny, 7,500 against Tampa Bay. I get the matchup is horrendous.
That's your other favorite guy.
Guy literally touched the ball like 35 times last week, didn't he? So he had 24 rush attempts. Like he just missed the 100-yard bonus on DraftKings by 3 yards, but got in the end zone twice, which was great. 12 targets. Like he did all of his damage when they were down like 30 points, it felt like. So I don't know. I still think he's in play, even though the matchup couldn't be much worse. He's 7,500, like you said, but making builds work with him and Christian McCaffrey might be a bit of a struggle this week. But I do think that maybe he's more of a tournament play, but the volume alone should at least have him on your radar.
Yeah, I think he's more of a tournament play, but I think he's a decent tournament play. Or the one thing with Lenny this year compared to years past is the catches. He's so involved through the air. In 2 games with Nick Foles, this guy's got 19 targets and 16 catches. I mean, 7 catches in week 8 as well. So I like the fact that even if he does get shut down on the ground, which he probably will, he'll probably catch 7 or 8 balls. When I say shut down, I mean, I just don't think he'll get 80 to 100 yards. But if you give him 20 carries, 60 yards and 7 grabs, it's not awful.
No, well, if I'm going down to Lemmy, I'm not doing it. Look, this is the week where you brought him up before, Chris. You talk about being on the field with like 95%, almost as much as Christian McCaffrey, and should be used as the same way Christian McCaffrey is, but he's not because Daniel Jones is an idiot. But all that being said, Saquon Barkley down at 7,600 and $100 less than Leonard Fournette on DraftKings. I like when you get to this price, we kind of had this conversation about other players. Joe, you bring him up a lot of times. Like at what point, like Odell Beckham becomes so cheap that you kind of just put him in because of the upside that he brings. You're going to give me Saquon Barkley at mid 7K. I pretty much put him in my lineup.
Yeah, I think his price is at a point, like you said, where he has to be in your consideration. Like I realize that he probably just hasn't looked healthy. Would you guys agree with that most of the year? Yes. That maybe that's been part of the issue with him. So if if he starts to kind of get that under control, there's going to be a week or two here where he is just drastically underpriced if we start to see the Saquon Barkley of old. So yeah, anything that you'd be kind of looking at from kind of a point per dollar perspective, I think that Saquon's got to be right there as someone that is going to see volume for sure. But we're still kind of, I want to be early on Saquon, so I'm with you on that.
Yeah, now's the time to do it. Absolutely. I don't know for cash, but now's the time to get involved with Saquon before he has that big blow-up game. This is the cheapest he's ever been. He opened up the year $9,000, and he got up to 9.2 at one point. So now is the time. Absolutely. Recency bias is such a thing in DFS. Nobody wants to play Saquon. They're looking at Henry and Fournette's big games. Look, Chubb's coming off a big game. CMC try to find a way to get him in. So I think Barkley's getting overlooked. And I mean, last week he was, again, pretty disappointing, but I would imagine his ownership's probably going to be pretty low again, Jake.
Yeah, so running back as well, Josh Jacobs, Chris, back to that situation. I mean, that's how you beat the Chiefs. It was a miserable game last week, miserable game last week. And, there's a couple of ways you could look at it. You could look at the fact, hey, it just was off week for the Raiders. It's the Raiders. So in context, it was an off week. But I bring that up in the off week of, was it Jalen Richard because they were down, or was it Jalen Richard because they started pulling all their starters? Like, what way are you attacking this where Josh Jacobs' price is still pretty attractive for what had been? If you take out last week, at this price, we're probably like hammer Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's a very solid price, and the one fear is that they get down again, because I think it was a little bit of both. I mean, they were completely blown out in that game. They were resting their starters halfway through the third quarter, looking ahead to this game, this matchup right now for the division on the line. But I mean, just tournaments, because I just have that fear that they will get down. And if they get down, it could be a little bit more of Jalen Richard. But I do like Jacobs' price. And at 69, all the numbers point to Oakland running the football and trying to have success against the ground. I mean, nobody's given up more fantasy points to running backs than KC. I mean, you just look at the rush DVOA defense. I mean, the third worst in football, just overall, and against the run, third worst as well. So, yeah, it's not a bad spot. I don't know, again, if I'd go there in cash, but I do think he'll be involved. I think he'll probably get 20 touches.
Yeah, I think Jacobs, I like the price a lot. Like, he's one of the ones that stood out to me right away when I started to kind of dive into the slate. I guess you look in, like, it's a little bit deeper on his touches, and there's a lot of volatility here, I feel like, for a running back, like, just based on, like, so he has a couple games where he's seen like 15 touches or so, and then he just explodes for like 28 touches out of nowhere. And like his receiving involvement, I guess, is just okay. But in comparison to some of these other guys we're talking about, I think he might be priced like kind of where he should be, honestly. Like there's a couple of guys that are more expensive that I would definitely prefer to move down to Jacobs. So I'm with you guys from a price perspective. I guess it makes me nervous, these guys where there's just so much volatility in their touches. It just like kind of reminds me a little bit of Chubb earlier in the season, where there were certain games where he would just out of nowhere have like 7 targets, and then like the next game he would have 1, and then like I don't know, that stuff makes me nervous in cash games.
So are you nervous about Aaron Jones as well?
I mean, I rarely play Aaron Jones. I guess those type of situations where it's just like a clear timeshare, it just, I don't know. I just there's nothing more tilting than having a guy at the running back position with the majority of your action, and then the other guy gets in the end zone. You know what I mean? Like that's the benefit of having a guy like Leonard Fournette, a guy even like your boy Derrick Henry. Like he's going to get the goal line touches. So there's value in guys like that in DFS for sure.
Jake doesn't want him to be his boy.
That's your boy, man. You're the one that's been talking about him for a while now, and I'm late to the party. I played him last week finally, which was good, but
I don't want him to be my boy. That's the problem, though. It's like I hate supporting Derrick Henry, not as much as I hate supporting Robbie Anderson and Sam Darnold, but I do. All right, so last one for you guys, Chris. Jonathan Williams in play. See, I mean, we're talking about, to Joe's point, to pivot off that is, or I should say, branch off that. We know, I'd say, quotes, no, he's going to be getting the volume.
Yeah, I guess we know he's certainly earned the touches. My one problem is that, I mean, his involvement through the year, I know he caught 3 passes last week, but I don't really think that's totally his thing. I mean, how will Jordan Wilkins get a little bit more involved? It's possible. I don't think he's a huge threat, but Nyheim Hines is definitely a threat to steal those catches, that third down work. So I don't mind it. On FanDuel, he's just too expensive. They're really giving him the respect. I mean, $6,800. I think that's too expensive for a guy like Jonathan Williams. I mean, Phillip Lindsay is $500 cheaper, I think, in a much better matchup. But I do agree with Joe. go in some of these backs in cash, I think you need to just stay away from potential, split backfields, right? I'm wearing Jacobs. I think he's projected at least for a few more looks, not just in the passing game, but on the ground. I feel a little bit safer rolling out a guy where it's basically his backfield. So I probably will shy away from Williams and Jones, but I am interested in Jones in tournaments. I think there's definitely some upside to be said there, but I don't mind Phillip Lindsay. Having said that with Freeman, I think Lindsay's last game earlier in the year against the Chargers, you can run on the Chargers, you can dominate the line of scrimmage there, and he had a pretty solid game. I mean, 15 for 114, had a touchdown, 4 grabs. It was his third highest catch game of the season. So I'm a little interested in Lindsay in tournaments and potentially in cash just because I like the DK price, but I don't think I'll get involved with Jonathan.
It's an interesting one because I think that, you can project him to be a decent kind of point per dollar play and whatnot. I think I totally agree with you on FanDuel. He's too expensive over there. On DraftKings, like finding someone like in this range is something you kind of need right now. So I'm trying to piece my way through if I want to go back to the well with Miles Sanders against Miami, 5,400, like really similar price. But this guy has just been burning people, and I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are going to go back there, but I feel like this is a range we're going to have to find at least someone playable this week in cash for sure to make some of this other stuff work.
Yeah, he's like a bad rash. He just keeps coming back.
Yeah, he's like always in the projections, like really high, and like I don't know. It's really tough. So
I laughed because I have him, and do I have him in both my lineups? Yes, I do. I have him in both my lineups
Miles?
Because Miles Sanders, the opportunity in this matchup, the opportunity with no Jordan Howard, you and I talked about it on the Throwback Show just a little while ago. I do think Jay Ajayi gets in the mix, but I still think that, Miles Sanders doesn't. I think he's Austin Eckler with a little bit few more carries. So, and that's where I'm going for. For the price here, it's going to be hard to get away from him. All right, anybody else before we move to wide receiver? No? Shaking head, no? Chris, no? Yeah, no. All right, let's talk wide receiver. And on FanDuel, I'm looking at this price, and it's 6,800, and I don't know why, because let me find them real quick. Let me go back to DraftKings, do a search. Oh, look.
He's the same.
Oh, you know who I'm talking about.
Hell yeah, I do. DJ Moore.
How the hell is he only 6,800?
I don't know. Snoozing. Absolutely. I mean, this guy leads the league in targets over the last 4 weeks. Yeah, I've been playing him every week now for, 5 or 6 weeks. I've been watching the price just go up slightly. Curtis Samuel is not an option at all for Kyle Allen. I think he had 1 target last week. He's been very, very mediocre. And Moore just has the track record. I don't understand it. I mean, 6 for 126, 8 for 95, 9 for 120, 7 for 101. Like, there has been a solid floor there for DJ Moore against Washington. Yeah, he's in every lineup of mine.
I like him. I mean, he's the guy that we were talking about, I feel like, every single week until they started to price these Carolina guys up, and I don't think they've gotten aggressive enough with DJ Moore, so totally with you on that. It seems like on FanDuel, it's crazy that he's the same price on both sides, to be completely honest. 4th highest wide receiver and weighted opportunity rating. I mean, his yards per out run is up there with some of the elite guys in the league as well. This is a game, I think, where like I said, I have some pace concerns just because Washington does slow things down a little bit, but I mean, Carolina should be, maybe it's the other way and they kind of push the pace of this game, and DJ Moore still remains as involved as he has been. I just think that he ends up being kind of that second security blanket for Kyle Allen. So yeah, totally in on DJ Moore at that price again this week.
All right, so who else are you looking at? I feel like Robert Woods is another really strong play as well.
Yeah, Woods is one that I kind of looked at just because of the matchup instantly, and then he was popping in basically projection models. So based on like kind of probably the matchup, but also just like this team scares me a little bit. But yeah, Chris, you're about to jump in. Does the Rams like kind of scare you a little bit in general? I feel like I need to take a deeper look at this one.
Yeah, I think it's right for all of us to be a little scared, and I think the fantasy community will be a little scared as well. This doesn't look like the Rams of old. They look defeated. Cooper Kupp has been disappointing for a couple weeks now, and I just think it's a get-right game for everybody. I mean, maybe not Cooks or Everett, but potentially you want to go ultra-contrarian, you want to go Kupp and Goff. I think people are probably sick of playing Kupp and Goff, or especially Kupp over the past couple weeks. I would imagine that. I mean, I can't... I haven't been playing them, but if you've been playing them, you're not winning money at all. You've come basically dead last. So I think it's just a get right game for everybody. But we mentioned you mentioned throwback. We talked about Woods, Jake, in over the past couple games that he's had. I mean, 20 targets and 13 grabs. You can't ignore that. They're getting him involved, whether it's a bubble screen, an end around, just a quick outlet pass. He seems to be the one getting involved because all the attention is going on Cooper Kupp. But I think. And I know for sure, actually, I will have in tournaments a Ram stack with these three.
More?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. Really,
I gave you the name. I want a name for you, Chris.
Yeah, I don't really have. I think that the price point makes me a little bit nervous, but everything you said, I mean, on FanDuel actually. So I think on DraftKings, yeah, like 5,500, he's a guy that we're gonna have to take a deep look at. And honestly, like I've been kind of skipping over him mentally, but he's like still like one of those. I mean, he's top 10 in weighted opportunity for like he's a price point guy that definitely pops out. So I love that you brought him up right away because I think he's one of the ones that stands out as being mispriced on DraftKings for sure.
What about Sammy Watkins? Is he now? there's that. I knew. Oh, watch the video. You have to see the head shake. That's the best way to describe Sammy Watkins. It's just like. I don't know.
He's in that range with like the boomer bust guys, right? The Fullers, the Marquise Browns.
I think that's where he deserves to be. It's every single week, 50 or 60 yards is whether or not he scores. But if this is one of the top 3 teams in big plays allowed, I
think you keep an.
I think his price is reasonable.
Yeah, it is reasonable. I think he's in play in tournaments, especially. The run game in KC is so questionable. We just don't know what's going on there. I don't know if any of you guys have heard about Damian Williams. It seems like you're just trying to find out what's happening with Damian Williams and LaShawn McCoy. Is he going to play? How active is he going to be on the ground? They haven't been able to run the football. So if that means 40-plus dropbacks against the Raiders and that secondary, you're giving up big plays like you said, Jake, sure. I mean, and keep an eye on Tyreek. If Tyreek doesn't play, Sammy Watkins. But I think there's another guy in that mid-range that is mispriced as another DJ, is DJ Chark. I mean, against Tampa. Let's roll out all these Jags. I think that's going to be a shootout.
Yeah. I love DJ Chark. I think it's like the whole head shaking for Watkins. It's just because like this guy like has just buried me so many times. So like working through your biases, even like mid-season, is something that you have to do as a DFS player. And admittedly, I've been poor at that at times. So 5,400 for him, like he doesn't really hit the metrics that I really value, but matchup's fantastic. Like especially if Tyreek ends up sitting out, it looks like they're optimistic that he's going to play with that hamstring injury. I guess he actually spent time recovering in Kansas City kind of before he took off for that bye week. So yeah, if we get Tyreek, like if he ends up being out, I think that obviously raises the floor a little bit for Watkins. If he's in, I think there's a little too much unknown there for cash games. But DJ Chark, like this guy is an absolute stud. 6,600. I think that he's someone that we could definitely go to. I mean, we talk about it every week with Tampa Bay, right? It's just a massive pass funnel, probably like a somewhat historic pass funnel situation, right? Because they've been so strong against the run. As much as I like my boy Lenny, DJ Chark's probably the one that makes a little bit more sense.
All right, so I think this one might have become my boy again, Chris. He was at the draft time. He was excuses after that. He was excuses after that, too, but it's been 4 years, and everybody had just buried him. Well, guess what? Devontae Parker's back. Although, somewhat of a letdown last week, going after the volume. Price still hasn't gone up, obviously, because of what happened last week, but your Eagles, I mean, I'm coming to you for this because you and I talked about this on the other show as well, is since Jalen Mills and Darby came back, this pass defense has been playing well. I don't want to say amazing, but well. So is Devontae Parker still a smash against the Eagles this week?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you talk about last week being a down week, sure, but he still came out with 15 DK points. I mean, he had 11 targets, 91 yards, 6 grabs. He's been pretty consistent now for a good chunk of time. I mean, even against the Bills and Tre'Davious White. I mean, he had 135 yards and 7 catches. So I know a lot of that came in garbage time, but we're dealing with the Miami Dolphins here, and that's just going to happen. So Fitzpatrick is not afraid. We've said this so many times. He is not afraid. There's a large enough sample size of Fitzpatrick forcing footballs to guys double team, triple team. He doesn't care at all. So I do like that price at 5.7. And again, we're talking about get right games with the Rams. I mean, it's potentially one with the Eagles too. And you're right, the defense has looked really good. It has. I mean, 2 games in a row, they've given up 2 touchdowns and they're trick plays to Russell Wilson and the Seahawks and Tom Brady / Julian Edelman and the New England Patriots. So I am a little afraid of the matchup for Fitz, but
no, you said not afraid.
He's going to get double-digit targets.
Stick with it. He's not afraid. You shouldn't be afraid. Well, we need like walk-up music for football players, like with baseball, because he had that Eminem song. I'm not afraid to take a stand. Pass the ball to every man. Joe, you gonna jump in?
I mean, I think he basically said everything kind of that I felt about that situation, and I don't know how to follow up that little music thing that he had going on there. I think that's what the people
music thing would be the best way to describe it.
That's the best way to describe it. Just the music, all the music things from Jake today. Yeah, man, I'm with you. I agree with everything you said, Chris. I don't have anything to add to that one.
Tyler Boyd is interesting in that price range too, 5.5. I mean,
for the price. Joe, here you go. What we said on the other show, I got to tell Chris knows where I'm going with this. I ranked him at 26. This is season long. But this is what I said about him, Joe. 26 is wrong. I'll tell you in advance 26 is wrong because it's either too high or too low.
Yeah, this is one where like he finally got there, hit that regression we've kind of been waiting for last week. I think that in theory, like this is a spot that would make some sense, especially because of his price. I would prefer to attack the Jets with someone that sees deeper targets. They're 29th in the league at defending the deep ball, kind of middle of the pack and in the short area of the field. But I mean, you can't deny like Boyd has been a frustrating asset this year because he is getting volume. He just hasn't really had that ceiling because of how poor this offense has been. So yeah, like he's someone that almost always like he ends up like in the conversation for me, someone that really likes to target that type of volume. But in this spot, I think that it's one of those ones where the pieces don't fit together seamlessly. But I do think that the price makes some sense.
Anybody else before we move to tight
end? That's it. I mean, I do like Adams as a one-off, Devontae Adams. I mean, we didn't really talk about top tier wide receivers. We kind of just glanced over Kupp. We didn't even mention the Tampa boys, but I do like Devontae Adams against your Giants, Jake. I mean, how could you not? Come on.
Because he should score 8 billion points. I mean, he should.
It's just coming off his first touchdown game of the season.
Well, so the only concern I do have, kidding aside, the concern I do have is that they get up early and easy, and Daniel Jones is a turnover machine. This turns into an Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams game.
Yeah.
Like, it's just possible. All them. That's the only concern I have there. I love that play. I'm with you. Unfortunately, because there's so many in the 6 range that I like, I wanted to get a running backs in. I didn't have a spot for him, but I do like the call.
Yeah, he seems like a guy.
Try and pick one of the Bucks, or let's talk tight end.
Actually,
which Buccaneers is it going to be? It's going to be
Joe. You nailed it last week, didn't you? Say Godwin? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I actually was shocked. So I was monitoring King of the Beach pretty heavily, just because one of my one-on-one clients had 4 seats in that, and we didn't end up on a Godwin side of it, but the ownership was crazy. Like I'm sure it was like this across the industry. Like Godwin was 4%, and Evans was like 32 in that. So if you were on the right side of that, you basically won all the money. I guess I obviously, like the things that I focus on, sometimes I don't hear as many narratives, but there's this narrative that Winston basically just likes to throw to Evans a lot when he's under pressure, and this is a spot where I thought that he would see some pressure, so maybe that's why people got on him. I liked Godwin just because if he's going to see pressure, just to me, that means like the short area of the field is what makes more sense. So, I like Godwin quite a bit last week. I actually had someone bring this up in a show that I had earlier this week, and they said that if you just did this one thing every week, you built a team with Jameis and either Mike Evans or Godwin, you play the exact same team in something like a 3-max tournament, one with Godwin, one with Evans. If you did that the whole year, you'd probably be rich, right? Like you just would have hit it every week. One of your teams would be dead, but you'd have the other team, you basically would have the nuts.
Yes.
I don't know. Probably negative EV, but I thought it was an interesting way to attack it.
That is an interesting way to look at it. All right, so we're going to come back to that game. The tight end position. So I'm going to tell you guys what I did. I went to tight end. I scrolled down. I scrolled a little bit further, and then I kept scrolling. And then I just put in Caden Smith, and then I started the rest of my lineup after that.
Oh, baby, Caden Smith, yeah. Wow. I actually don't hate it because I think you just spend up or you just spend absolutely down. And if you're going to play CMC, you're going to have to go down. So it seems like Jones is leaning on whoever is in at the tight end position. I'm sure that's where you're going, Jake. What do you have, 5 catches, a touchdown last week?
It's the opportunity share, it's the target share, it's the fact that nobody's out. And so Chris also knows this, Joe. The last 5 games, tight ends against the Packers have averaged 5.7 catches, 87.3 yards, 5 touchdowns total, and 6.6 half-point PPR.
It's not
I
bad.
mean, I guess this is where we're at this point of the year. This is where we're at. Like, this is the guys we have to play on DraftKings to get some of these other players in. So, yeah, I mean, I think that if, you have to consider these guys is the reality of roster construction.
He's my Noah Fant.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's
jersey.
a tough brand, my friend.
That might be an easy jersey because I could just, if it doesn't work out, it's Smith. I mean, that's easy. Although there hasn't been a lot of Smiths with the Giants, but I could be like, yeah, it's that guy.
I'm sure
they'll
draft one. I'm sure.
Or I could just do the Beowulf thing. So then, 10 years from now, people are like, who the heck is Beowulf? And it'd be like, you had to be there.
I'm just looking down at that price range. I mean, just trying to punt the position. There's really not a whole lot. You can jump up.
He's the only one.
I think there's that's what I was going to say. I think Jack Doyle, but you have to move up a bit to get there, right? But he's the one that I think stands out the most by far down there.
Yeah.
Well, he's 1,000. I said only 1,000 more. He's 5,000, only 1,000 more on FanDuel. It's a little bit different on DraftKings because you get that PPR boost and there's a little bit more different pricing, as you know. But I do like Jack. You guys know I like Jack Doyle.
Yeah, no Eric Ebron. TY, not 100%. Yeah.
I mean, Tennessee's
by the way, Chris,
a good matchup too.
How did that Cameron Brate thing work for you?
Yeah, not great. Yeah, thanks for that. Luckily I didn't have a lot of shares of him. I played Dallas Goedert. I still like Goddard. He put the ball on the ground, but he came away with 7 catches last week, and we still don't know who's going to catch footballs in Philadelphia. It's Ertz and it's Goddard. I actually played both of them in a lineup that was successful without Carson Wentz, believe it or not. But I still think what we've seen from Ertz over the past 3 weeks is again, even against Miami, I think this is going to continue to see it. I mean, Wentz is just starving for somebody to catch a football, and it just seems like it's just Zach Ertz and Goddard.
So jokes aside, I did bring that up with a point. I brought it up with the point of matchups don't. We did it earlier this year. I told you I wasn't doing Tyler Eifert. Matchups only go so far, but I do bring this up, Chris, and I was poking fun, but I do have a serious question out here. Is the Arizona Cardinals are on tap for the Rams. Now, Joe Everett reportedly was dealing with the injury, and that's why his snaps were so low in that game. If he gets in a full practice on Friday, do you get Gerald Everett into your lineup because he is facing the Cardinals, or is it too much concern for you now at this point? Because, again, that's why I'm bringing up the discussion is where does matchup and the line for you?
Yeah, I look at the price and I just don't like it at 46. The past couple weeks he just hasn't been healthy, so I understand it's against Arizona, but yeah, I'm personally not going to go there. I get it, but I just haven't seen enough from him over the past couple weeks, and I'm not going to believe that he's fully healthy, even if he does practice in full on Friday.
He's too expensive, man. Yeah, I'm totally with you, especially on DraftKings. I think at that range, for me, it's still Greg Olsen, 4,400. Like, he's ran more routes than anyone on the slate over the last 4 weeks. Washington 31st against the tight ends. They're at home, decent total. Like, I think the Greg Olsen thing's always kind of hard to click in a single entry situation, and his price is outside the range of the Gesicki's and the Doyles of the world, which obviously gives you a lot of savings that you need. So it's tough price range for tight end to get to that mid 4K range just overall. And if I'm going to do it, it's probably not going to be Everett, even though the matchup is obviously, it's basically the best matchup there could possibly be. So not for me, I don't think.
Jake, even though I mentioned Brate, you mentioned Vance McDonald. Vance McDonald had 1 point, as one more point than Brate.
Vance McDonald.
Who did I mention, guys? Gesicki, probably.
I think so, yeah, and he was decent, wasn't he?
It's Will Fuller. You can mention him every single week. Eventually, he's going to hit.
Yeah, that's the play. That's why my mentions blow up whenever Noah Fant catches the ball.
Enough with Noah Fant. All right, so who are you looking at this week, Joe? You kind of poo-pooed on everybody so far.
No, I think it's Doyle for me, honestly, for the mention or for what we mentioned before with Ebron being out, and I think just that $3,300 price tag, Tennessee 26 against the tight end. I think a lot of things kind of line up for Doyle. This is a guy that could end up being in this mid 4K range with Greg Olsen and those type of plays before long. So I think that he's just underpriced this week on DraftKings for sure.
All right, let me ask you guys 2 more. Both have top 7 APA matchups. Cincinnati ranks 5th. Kansas City ranks 7th. Ryan Griffin, 1, with how good he's been and how much involved he's been. And then 2, is Waller fallen enough in price to get him back onto your radar, even as quiet as he's been?
Yeah, Waller's a good one. because no Hunter Renfrow. You look at Waller early on in the season,
Right.
he's getting all those targets and catches. And if you do paint that script where KC is going to be up, Waller's going to get a few looks. So I like the Waller one. I've been on Griffin for a couple weeks too, but now I'm not crazy about his price at 4.3. He does have 4 touchdowns in 4 games without Herndon. That's nice. It's great. But again, I just think it's going to be a whole lot of Lev Bell. So more interested in Waller. And in that price range, again, I think at 4.3, I'd rather just spend down and maybe just punt the position even more. Yikes.
Waller's a tough one for me because, like you said, he's 5,500. It's that next tier of the pricing in Kansas City, obviously 4th best against the tight end, so not a great matchup there. But just looking at some of these, like there's some tough matchups for some of the elite tight ends, right? So we have like Mark Andrews against San Francisco. We've got Kelsey. I guess Oakland's kind of middle of the pack, but like it's really tough to justify. I think the position of paying up DraftKings for sure. Just paying up at the tight end position is really hard to justify with some of these mid 3K guys that. We can still project for at least a decent amount of volume, even though it's gross.
Okay, so let's talk about quarterback then. And on DraftKings, Joe, the second thing I did after I went down to Caden Smith is I scrolled back up to the top. And I said, hey, you're going to give me him as the second highest price quarterback and not the first. I'm putting Lamar Jackson in my lineup. Now, I didn't do it on FanDuel because, respectively, he is the highest as he should be. And 87 is a heck of a lot. It'll be 87, 86, Patrick Mahomes, and then 81 for third for Rodgers. But you're going to give him $400 less on DraftKings? Yes, Lamar Jackson was the second person I put in my lineup on DraftKings.
I mean, you like playing 4 running backs? Is that good? Yeah, no. It's the first thing I saw too was that he was cheaper than Patrick Mahomes. So like, if this just feels like the classic, just paying like they're just pricing these guys down because of the matchup. Like we saw Kyler Murray have some success against the San Francisco team too. Like is Lamar Jackson someone we're just going to avoid when we saw like someone with at least I don't know. I was about to say a comparable skill set. I'm not sure anyone has a comparable skill set to Lamar Jackson, but at least the type of success that he had, I definitely think Lamar can get there. 7K. This is going to be the cheapest we see him the rest of the year.
No, nobody has a comparable skill set because it's like Adonis had sex with Hercules and had a baby. Like, that's Lamar Jackson.
You see Michael Vick on the sidelines watching the game. Even he was impressed. Like, whoa, I couldn't do this.
Michael Vick's like, I didn't even do that.
I like
Chris?
I like Mahomes. I mean, I understand the Jackson thing. I typically don't spend up at the quarterback position, but I may do it with Patrick Mahomes. As I said, I think he's going to drop back and throw 40-plus times against a weak secondary in Oakland. But, I mean, I'm not going to say anything negative about Lamar Jackson. Joe's absolutely right. And, you know, the defenses for San Fran, I mean, the defense it's awesome. It's great. But they have struggled twice against Murray and Russell Wilson. So, I mean, a lot of these guys have... You know, they're very similar. They're elusive. They can move around in the pocket and make things happen with their legs. So I have no problem with Lamar Jackson. I mean, it's silly to tell anybody to fade Lamar Jackson, but I like Mahomes slightly more. And I wonder, because he's $400, like you guys are just saying, right? You guys are both sharp. You're saying, oh, Lamar Jackson, $400 cheaper. I'm playing him. So I feel like that's kind of where most people will go. They don't want to spend that 7-4 on Patty Mahomes.
But what do you always say, Chris?
I don't know.
That chalk isn't a bad thing if it's the best play.
Sure, but... Maybe Mahomes is the best play.
Well, I know. I was to the point of him being chalk.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with chalk.
See, we got to get some other options out there for people. So one of the other ones, can you guys guess? I've only done it like 17 times this year. Can you guess where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I'm right
Joe's
there
smiling.
with you and Jameis, right?
Naked Jameis. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. He only threw the ball 28 times last week, but 3 touchdowns.
That's your plus EV, Joe, is stop trying to figure them two out and then just naked Jameis.
Yeah, because one of them hits every week.
That's the problem, though. I think, like, my probably biggest mistake with this whole Tampa Bay, like, decision, at least in tournaments this year, is, like, because I can't figure it out, I haven't played enough Jameis because I've just been Xing out these Tampa Bay guys overall. Like, if you basically go broke trying to figure out which one to stack, and I mean, you've been saying naked Jameis most of the season, so props to you on that one. It's something that I definitely, I mean, I haven't played Jameis near enough because he's been running a lot more too, and I think that's something that doesn't really come out in the projections enough either. Like, I've only got him at like 15 or so rushing yards. I think you could probably bump that up a little bit relative to like kind of what he's been doing in recent weeks. I think he's an awesome play. He's significantly cheaper than the other two guys we were talking about on FanDuel for sure. He's $7,600 on FanDuel, so that's a nice price tag for him. I actually kind of like the Jacksonville side of the game as well. I think that Tampa Bay Jacksonville game is super interesting. So yeah, I think Jameis is totally fine.
Yeah,
I'm making myself laugh in my head because I was like, you know what I need to get? We keep getting things from behind us. I need to get a picture of Jameis doing the George Costanza picture from Seinfeld. He's half naked on the couch. That's what I need behind me. I need that picture. Somebody can make that. If somebody has the Photoshop skills to make the naked Jameis as George Costanza on the couch, please do it for me. I will immediately take it and print it out and put it behind me. Credit to you, and I'll call you out on the show. So please, if anybody has those skills, I want it. Chris, Nick Foles for you? Somebody else you're looking at?
Yeah, I do like Foles. I agree with Joe. I think both sides of it. I've been playing a lot of Jameis as well. And I mean, you're right, Joe. Over 150 rushing yards in his last 5 games. So he's been pretty productive on the ground, calls his own number sometimes. And he's got 2 top 5 wide receivers to deal with. And on the other side, Foles has just been slinging it. I mean, it hasn't all been good, but since he's been back, 47 passing attempts, 48 last week. I mean, that's a lot of passing attempts, and game script has favored him to throw the football, but it may favor him again to throw the football. The defense in Jacksonville does not look good right now, especially the secondary since they lost Jalen Ramsey. And I like all of his weapons. We just talked about DJ Chark. I mean, D.D. Westbrook's in a good spot. Chris Conley's in a decent spot as well. He's fairly cheap, so this is a game that I'm going to attack from both sides, and I think it's the contrarian way to spend down and put Nick Foles in your lineup at 5-7. Pretty good spot.
All right.
I'm in.
Any more for you, Joe? We good?
No, I think I really like the Foles call on the other side, but the Jameis one, I admit that's probably just one I've avoided a little too much this year. So apologies to everyone out there.
There's such a big price gap on DK.
Is.
On FanDuel, 7.5 for Foles, 7.6 for Winston. I mean, I think I'll lean Winston, but on DK, there's a huge gap in terms of pricing.
There is.
Foles a better tournament play on FanDuel.
A little sneak preview. I do have him on the one, but I have Winston on FanDuel, but I have Lamar Jackson on DraftKings. I'm not going away from that. Those are my boys. Those are definitely my boys. All right, so defenses, Chris. Look at that, 2 weeks in a row. I remember defenses for you. We got them before the end of the show. Eagles, Patriots, Panthers, Steelers. I mean, these are like the top plays. I'm just kind of rattling them off here. Where are you looking, Chris?
Yeah, I like the Eagles on DK 3.6 on FanDuel 5. I'm not going to go there. They're the most expensive defense on FanDuel. And the same thing, you can flip it on with the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers 3.5 right near the top in terms of pricing on DK, but on FanDuel, you have to go scrolling down to find the Steelers. So I know Cleveland's turned it around a little bit, but I still like their defense overall at 3.7. I think they're a decent play.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think both. I think that you can make an argument for the defenses, both the defenses in that game, actually, because like the Cleveland side of the ball, 2,600, like they're still the second highest pressure rate on the slate. So against Devlin Hodges, I don't even know how to say this guy's name, so he's got to be in play, right?
They call him Duck Hodges, I think.
Yeah, I think
Pittsburgh Dodges.
Pittsburgh really stands out on FanDuel, though. 3,700 is a pretty crazy price tag. Do you guys like any of these like super cheap guys? Like, so I've been like trying to figure out if these like sub 2K defenses are like ever in play. It seems like this week we got Oakland against Mahomes, we got the Giants against Rodgers. I don't know, kind of Miami maybe, but they don't pressure enough for me. They're like bottom 3 on the slate in pressure rate. So maybe the Cardinals again. I know I've mentioned the Cardinals a lot this year, but maybe the Cardinals against Goff on the road. That one at 2,300, I could see going down there.
That's interesting for that aspect, especially now that they legitimately have a piece in Peterson that can do something. So that makes it more appealing. I was gonna say I paid down on draft. This is another piece straight from my lineup. I paid down under 3,000 on DraftKings and close to 4,000 on FanDuel. I went with the Chiefs. You're talking about. You go against Derek Carr, you go against the offense that looked miserable last week, and that's not the only reason. But as you mentioned, Chris, lost Hunter Renfrow. Maybe Waller completely makes up for that, and that's what they need. They need to go back to Waller. They need to get back to Josh Jacobs, and it's a rebound game. But all that being said, it's an opportunity where their defense has been playing better. Also, their pass defense has been really good, and this is an opportunity for some turnovers. And they have the guys that can turn one of those turnovers into a touchdown. And also, of course, the return game with McCole Hardman. I mean, that's always a touchdown waiting to happen as well.
Yeah, it's very possible. I love the Browns call and 2.6 on DK. This is another one where, FanDuel and DraftKings are just completely not on the same page here. 4.6 for Cleveland, and that's probably where they should be priced as a top 5 defense this week. And, their price is a bottom 6 defense over on DraftKings. So I think in that range, I get it. Chiefs 2.7. I may just go Browns 2.6. The Ravens as well. I mean, this defense is completely nasty, man. They can get after the quarterback. And Jimmy has thrown picks. I know he's looked a little bit better lately, but I'm really digging what I see in Baltimore, not just offensively, but defensively. Ever since they made that trade, 18 points, 13, 24, 15, 13. The sacks are there too, 9 in their last 2 games, getting after the quarterback, generating picks. They have a pick in every game since week 4. Unbelievable.
Yeah, there was like a spur like in the middle of the season where we were kind of targeting them a little bit, but it seems like they've really turned it around, and I love the pressure. They ended up being pretty low on defense 2 weeks ago, so maybe against San Francisco people won't go there. I guess still can't believe Pittsburgh's 3,700 on FanDuel. Like that one really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I think they look really strong over there. I guess I have a little bit of an issue. Last week we had a lot of people kind of going to the Denver defense, even like some higher stakes players that I really respect, and I just couldn't figure out why they were in play last week. Like they were on the road, they don't pressure, so like there seems to be like some situations like that I'm trying to avoid this week as well. But it's kind of hard, especially on a Thanksgiving week.
I can tell you why.
Let's hear it.
It's 100% Josh Allen. It's just because Josh Allen,
really?
It's the turnovers. They're chasing turnovers. That's really what it was. You're right about the pressure, but Josh Allen throws picks. He has a ton of fumbles. Honestly, he's somehow recovered more fumbles this year than he should. So I think that's all it was, is people were just chasing the turnovers.
That's why I think people will try to chase the turnovers with Miami. It's the same sort of thing with Wentz. He's got 5 fumbles lost over the last 5 weeks, and he just hasn't looked good, but I agree. You're really rolling the dice with Miami. Two fantasy points per game.
Yeah, I don't know. I think
negative.
It's always got to be the tiebreaker's always got to be pressure. I think, and that's I don't know. I was really pumped when I saw they were like 30% last week. That's just one I wasn't on. But you love
seeing percentages and laughing at people. That's like your favorite. That's your Sunday enjoyment.
It's the best part, just opening it up and seeing like really bad plays like be like 30%.
Joe sees 1:01 p.m. and he's like, "Look at these idiots!"
Or I open my lineup and I see guys that are like 5%. And it's like, "Oh God, what did I miss? This could be bad." It goes both ways.
Maybe you're just that smart. All right, so let's talk some tournament plays and get those out there for everybody.
You down with GPP?
And running back, tournament plays. Is there anybody left at running back? Okay, you know what? Scratch that. I'm not even going to ask the question. Pretend I didn't ask the question because I'm going to give you one. I'm going to give you the fact that we didn't bring up Mark Ingram. And I think we didn't bring up Mark Ingram for a reason. It's Mark Ingram. He's Mark Ingram facing the 49ers. And there's always this this perception of a ceiling with Mark Ingram. But with the way that the Ravens have been playing, that ceiling's kind of been blown through a couple times already. Tournament play because everybody is going to be off him. We don't have the projected ownership because we are recording a day ahead this week. I would assume his projected ownership is near the bottom.
Yeah, I think that would be a good assumption.
For a reason, though, right? I don't know. I'm not really on Mark Ingram. What do you? I don't have. I haven't played him once all season. I think if people are kind of remembering what kind of role he had for the Saints, it's just a totally different situation for the Ravens. Like anytime you're rolling out a running back when the quarterback has like definitely a reasonable expectation to have more rushing yards, I don't know. I think it's thin.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not really on him. He has hit his ceiling over the past couple of weeks. He's got 4 touchdowns over the last 4 weeks. So he's always a threat to score a touchdown when they get in the red zone, but Lamar calls his number so much, and Gus Edwards has been getting involved. And so I don't know if I'll fully go there. But, if you're looking for a contrarian,
you know what he did against New England, right?
Yeah, I know. And New England's, I think, an easier matchup for him.
Well, so Rams last week, which is supposed to be not run against ever. Like it's not, of course, we're not talking 49ers, but you're not supposed to be able to run against them. 27.8 points, 23.5 against Houston. I bring up New England because he was 18.4, which would be 3 times value on his price. And yes, you have the floor, but this is why I'm bringing him up as a tournament play. You go back to Kansas City, and yes, everybody ran against Kansas City earlier this year, but 38, 25 against Miami. That's, again, I'm not pushing him on you guys. I just think he's an interesting tournament option.
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's just contrarian. You catch a few balls. You just look at some of the running backs that played San Fran lately. Williams, 7 catches. Drake, 6 the week before that. Drake again a couple weeks before that one, 4 catches. So, it's possible you can come away with 3 or 4 grabs and get you a touchdown and be all right. I haven't played too much of him either. I usually play him. When I do play him, it's against, I think, just soft teams where I feel like maybe he'll find the end zone. That happened a couple of times. I think he played Cincy early on in the year where he didn't have a great game on the ground, but he scored a rushing touchdown and he made the day okay. But, yeah, it's not on my radar. I don't hate it. Stop pushing him on me.
All right, fine, whatever. Yeah, Mark Ingram. He's now my boy apparently too. Joe, either the Chargers guys for you? We didn't talk about them either.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon's popping a little bit. I think it's really tough to kind of figure out who's going to have the game in Denver. It's just going to be such a tough game environment. I hate playing running backs in Denver, and I know that sounds like a terrible narrative, but like these guys, like dealing with the elevation, I don't know, the running back position, I think that sometimes even we have like these rotations, we can see even a little bit more in Denver because of that. So it makes me a little bit nervous. Like for the same price, I don't know, Todd Gurley, I get what he just did, but like we're talking tournament plays, like literally no one's gonna click this guy, and it is a fantastic matchup. Arizona 31st at defending running backs in the passing game. Nice team total, even though it's on the road. Like we see a lot of play volume in these Arizona games, and I don't know if Goff maybe figures it out. Maybe Todd Gurley, I don't know. Maybe he gets back on track. I actually thought that like this past week, like maybe we would start to see him kind of get back on track, and then just drops a dud that everyone saw in prime time. But 25 carries the week before, 3 targets in back-to-back weeks. I don't know. I think that there's at least a chance that Gurley starts to kind of bring things back on the tracks a little bit, and he's only 6,500.
Yeah, I don't hate that call, actually. I kind of like it. The fact that he's $6,500 is certainly intriguing. He mentioned the catches, 6 catches in his last 2 games. I don't want to put last week on him against Baltimore, but this is a much better matchup for him. And you're right, fast-paced game, maybe a few grabs of the backfield. Don't mind that call.
Jalen Samuels?
No, thanks.
No? All right, Joe Mixon?
Nah.
Yeah, like what do we think about that range though? Because if we needed to find like a $5,500 guy, like who do you guys? I think it's Miles Sanders for me, just because of the matchup against Miami, and just like the snaps, the volume, like it's been at least decent for that range, and I think he's ran a little bit bad the last couple of weeks. Like, do you guys have a favorite in that range?
I don't mind the Sanders call. I think in that range for me, I'd just go back to Lindsey at 5K. Yeah, but I mean they're kind of similar. I'd just give the edge to Lindsey. But yeah.
All right, one more for you guys then. Kenyon Drake? ?
I'm just too afraid of what's happening in Arizona. I just with Edmonds and I know DJ's been a non-factor, but these guys are all going to be active. How involved is Chase Edmonds going to be? I don't know. I don't think I can go there with Kenyon Drake. If it was just his backfield, I would be a lot more interested.
Do you think they've carved out a role for this guy though? I mean, 7 targets in back-to-back weeks. I mean, his involvement on the ground is kind of back and forth a little bit. Like there's some volatility there, but I don't know. I mean, I'm always intrigued by these guys that are just so active in the like it seems like almost like a James White type of stat line for him right now, and he's not priced anywhere near kind of that tier. I guess 5,600. It's maybe thin with some of these other guys in terms of touches, but in a tournament, maybe he gets there, breaks a big play for you in this this game environment that I think people will be on.
Jake, your boy Benny Snell.
Not my boy. I bet
you he'd be pretty popular. I bet you the most popular combo will be CMC and Benny Snell. Just makes sense, right? You put in CMC, you got 4K to spend. Where's a back that's around 4K?
But I think Benny Snell is definitely going to be in too many lineups, honestly. And so Chris, for everybody out there, is saying that tongue in cheek because he knows I'm not a huge fan of Benny Snell as a talent in general. I call him a lesser version of Jordan Howard, very similar to Jordan Howard. But the concern I have about this game and what we talked about on our show is the fact that if this goes to a game script where Cleveland gets out early, could it be Jalen Samuels again? I mean, like Jalen Samuels basically wasn't used last week for a game that they should have run away with, but it was a game they were in control. And so I don't know that the Benny Snell 20 touches is a guarantee. So, all right, wide receivers for you guys. How about Scary Terry? Nobody's talking Scary Terry. He's at least still productive because he is the only option, and it's a good matchup.
Go ahead, Joe.
I mean, I think he was top 3 in air yards last week. Obviously, a tough spot if he ends up getting Bradbury this week. I don't know. His weighted opportunity.
Is Bradbury definitely playing?
I don't know. That's something. I mean, we're recording this on Tuesday. I'll check that in a second. But honestly, though, like
Wednesday, you don't even know what day it is anymore.
I had to look at my calendar actually.
Yeah. I have no idea what day it is. Dude, Thanksgiving week. One thing before we talk about this, I think Thanksgiving week in general, people are kind of out of their routines. Like this is a week where like you can actually kind of take advantage. And you'll say one thing too, like the content that comes through. Like a lot of people are going to kind of funnel to similar plays even more than normal because no one's doing as much research this week. So I think this is a great week to be contrarian. So from the wide receivers, like this is the position to do it for sure. Yeah, so McLaurin at 5,600, I think at that price point, like right around Woods, and I mean, just I think that's going to be a game that people are going to go to, and I think on FanDuel in particular, McLaurin's 5,800, like that definitely is a price point that stands out for a guy that's still top 10 weighted opportunity. Like he's still someone that we want to be targeting. Like again, we'll have to keep an eye on that matchup, and the team total is always terrifying with Washington. It's similar to the issues I have with these Miami Dolphins here and there. It's just like, how do you get behind a wide receiver with a 15-point implied total on the road? It's a tough spot, but I could see it being a decent tournament play just because of the volume alone.
Yeah, that's my one problem too. Is exactly what Joe just said. I mean, just this Miami or this Washington team, they're just not scoring a lot of points. But I mean, the volume is absolutely there. I mean, if you watch that game last week, I mean, 12 targets, 5 catches. It was some poor thrown balls, but there was some opportunities where he was completely wide open, even with a guy like Darius Slay on him. So I don't hate the call. $5,600. He's $5,800 on FanDuel too, so it's not bad. And then another bad team, I'm staring at Boyd and Woods in that price range that I'd rather just get involved with. But I think, he makes for a good tournament option, Jake.
You love some Boyd. All right, so who else are you looking at?
Really, again, if we want to go a little bit cheaper, I know you mentioned Robbie Anderson earlier. Just kind of touched on Chris Conley. Chris Conley, I think in a potential shootout.
I don't mean to jump in, but to go back real quick, I would pivot straight to Jamison Crowder. I think because, again, I'm assuming, check for everybody out there, if you can check ownership projections by a lot of people will be talking about it, tweeting about it. Maybe some of us will tweet about it. But I feel like Robbie Anderson is going to be so heavily owned in that game that you pivot right back to Jamison Crowder if you want a piece of that.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just playing Bell. I mean, I'm just throwing guys out that are cheap that you could get in there. I'm all in on Lev Bell this week. I'm kind of just fading the passing game, but I think it does.
Royalties, all in.
Yeah, make some sense. So... I mean, in that price range, again, I'm just kind of looking at Chris Conley. I mean, why not against Tampa? And 9 targets, 8 targets. We mentioned Foles and how many times he's thrown the football over the past couple of weeks. So that's kind of where I'm going of looking for a cheap wideout.
I like it. I like the Conley call a lot. Like he's someone like I think people don't realize the kind of usage he has at times. Like I talked about McLaurin like being a top 3 guy in air yards last week. Like Conley was right there too, and he was actually like one of the biggest differentiators I think I had last week in tournaments because he was pretty low owned. If he would have kind of realized any of those targets, it could have been really nice. I think that's interesting. He's $6K on FanDuel as well. Like he's basically the same price as Robbie Anderson, who I agree. I think Robbie Anderson's going to be decently popular. I think we're pretty heavy on this Jacksonville game right now, but I don't hate it.
Yeah. All right, one more for you guys before we get to tight ends and quarterbacks. Let's go back to it. Tyrell Williams, volume. No Hunter Renfrow, game they're going to need to pass. Again, it could go back to Darren Waller, but Tyrell at the beginning of the season is touchdown in every single game.
Yeah, game script again, and sure, I definitely don't hate it. If KC gets up again, I mean, it could be Tyrell Williams. I mean, I definitely don't mind that call.
All right, then tight ends. Anybody we haven't mentioned already? Like tight end feels like we've talked about it before. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's either pay up or don't pay up, and it's all the same considerations.
And there never seems to be a guy all the way down here that like gets crazy as far as an ownership perspective is like. So I don't know. I think a lot of these guys that are running routes, like it's like 3,600 and below, you can make probably an argument for like 5-6 different guys. So my weekly play at Michael Gesicki. That's what I
got. Chris.
That's it, man. That's all the tight ends. I'm either again spending up for Ertz, or I'm gonna spend down for the Caden Smiths of the world. Help me now.
Yes,
help me now.
Caden Smith. Let's do it. Quarterbacks. Anybody we haven't mentioned that you would think of quarterback wise?
No. Maybe Goff again. Try to beat Contrarian. Everyone has seen the poor performances over the past couple of weeks, especially on prime.
I'll give you a Contrarian play at quarterback.
Derek Carr?
No, Joe. His last name is basically as common as Smith almost, and he plays for the same team because he is Jameis Winston. As I told you guys, Daniel Jones is a worse version of Jameis Winston. This could be a game nobody wants him where he turns around and throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns because he's Jameis Winston.
I'll let you play him.
Yeah,
I'm not. I was just giving you an option.
I hope you play him in the 3-man. That would make me feel a lot better.
No, I'm not playing him, period. Chris, just 3 weeks ago, you were trying to talk me into Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I probably like the matchup a little bit better. I don't know who he's playing at that time, but yeah, I mean, when all his weapons are fully healthy and Barkley's not and Evan Ingram's not around, he's off my radar.
Barkley's actually asleep.
I think I liked him against Detroit. Oh, baby, 4 touchdowns.
Oh, yeah, you're going to go back and look at... No, you liked him against Arizona.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
I don't know. We have to check the tape. I don't remember which one it was.
I'm not getting involved. I think the cheapest I would go is probably Derek Carr 5.5. I know that Dalton's 4.7, but I don't think I can get there.
Yeah,
it's a
Barkley
tough week
is
for
asleep
these
on
really
my feet and nice and warm.
Tough for these cheap quarterbacks this week. Like normally I have a guy down there that's like, you can make some sort of like, I guess, argument, at least I don't think there's one of those guys this week. Like Derek Carr all the way down there, I don't know, seems bad.
Fair enough. All right, let's talk stacks, and then quickly we'll talk lineup. So stacks.
Stack attack.
All right. Do we have any this week? Chris, you doing your Eagle stack? Is that what you did?
No, I think I was just stretching. No, I am not doing an Eagle stack. We talked so much about this Jacksonville Tampa game. I'll just leave that for somebody else. Let's go just ultra contrarian and get right game for Goff and Cooper Kupp and Woods.
I had a feeling you were going to say them for some reason.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get them all in. You want to do a little old school Goff to Gurley, back in the day when that guy used to catch 5 or 6 balls. I mean, this could be the get right game for the Rams this week. Play them all.
Don't hate it.
Joe?
Definitely don't hate it. So, yeah, I guess we've talked enough about this Jacksonville. I guess we might as well. I think this is clearly the play. You play Foles, Conley, DJ Chark. You bring one lineup back with Godwin, and then you play another lineup. You do the same thing. You bring that one back with Mike Evans, and then that's one of those is definitely dead. The other one, you're going to win everything. So I wish I would have done that all year.
I kind of like that. That's an intriguing. I think the only other one I would consider is, you keep bringing them up, Chris, I would consider a jet stack. I mean, if you want to go for it, and you could always, to your point of what you talk about, Joe, we know Sam Darnold's going to be popular. We know Robbie Anderson's going to be popular. So you do Sam Darnold, Lev Bell, Jamison Crowder, and maybe even toss in a Ryan Griffin. I mean, you can get pieces of this game and still differentiate enough to kind of to what you were talking about. But I like that one. All right, so let's put our lineups out there. We're not doing Thanksgiving, as you guys could tell. That's why we skipped so much for that. But let's do it.
DFS Battle Royale.
I don't. Chris, you had Thanksgiving, so you get to go first. There you go. So your Thanksgiving's over, so you get to first to the plate here.
Okay, so let's go with Nick Foles at the quarterback position, Lev Bell, Christian McCaffrey, got Tyler Boyd, DJ Moore, DJ Chark. I'm trying to find as many DJs as I can. Caden Smith is in there as well.
Yeah.
I know. And I really, I wanted to, and I probably will try to make this work with Ertz and as the flex, but it really I really have to punt the defense position. So I will just throw in Phillip Lindsay right now, talking to you guys as flex, and that leaves me with the Steelers defense and a few $100s. I may have to tinker because I do want Ertz in there as a flex. I know 2 tight ends is really strange, but right now we'll go Lindsay flex.
Every once in a while it'll work.
Yeah, it works. It worked for me last week on DK. I think it's a better play to do it on DraftKings, but yeah.
I said don't do it because usually when you try to force something, it ends up not working.
Right, but I do like Ertz a lot.
Yeah, I think it's more of a DraftKings thing for sure. But keep tinkering over there. We'll give you a little bit longer. No, I think that, I don't know. So one of the things that I've been trying to focus on in tournaments is doing a main stack, of course, but also like with the rest of my lineup, trying to build in like a little mini stack as well. So correlating 2 different ways. So I tried to do that this week. So I'm going to go Foles, Fournette, Conley, and Chark. I just realized that I'm not bringing it back with anyone on Tampa Bay, so maybe I'll have to tinker a little bit as well. But then also going to have Christian McCaffrey, of course, my boy. Miles Sanders at running back. My mini stack is going to be on that Philly side of that game. So Sanders and Goddard, and then just punting with the Pittsburgh defense. I guess think they're super underpriced. And then Robbie Anderson was kind of my last guy in, but I do think that it's a great spot to beat someone deep. So I think that's one that, like, my wide receivers, this is what I try and do. It's like Conley, Anderson, Chark. Like, there's a ton of upside of upside there. So I think that's it's an interesting tournament spot for Jacksonville guys. No one coming back. I don't love that, but might tinker a little bit more.
And don't listen to Jake. He loves Robbie Anderson.
Oh my God. No, so
First
this
place.
is why it's worst. This is why Pat Mayo created worst place. It's because it's people like, for him, Mark Ingram, which I always told you he was wrong about, but Jared Cook, we both agreed on, Tavon Austin, it's people like you don't want to, or you do want to get involved with. They disappoint. You give up, then they hit again. You get back on board, and then they disappoint again. It's like you can never get it because it's always when you finally give up that they hit, and then when you're back on board. And I'm getting sucked into Sam Darnold and Robbie Anderson as people have seen my rankings, and I feel like they're just going to pull the Jared Cook and let us down. And if it happens, they're going to be in worse place, and that's why I went, and I can't do it. But it could definitely work out. I actually hope for the people that do, it does work out because we like seeing you win money, of course. So my lineup, you know where I'm going. Naked Jameis at quarterback, of course. Le'Veon Bell, Miles Sanders. We have a lot of overlaps, different overlaps, which I like. My wide receivers are Woods, Parker, and DJ Moore. Caden Smith at the tight end position. The only guy not smiling in my lineup, and Christian McCaffrey in the flex, and then the Kansas City Chiefs defense. All right, well, as a reminder for everybody, Joe is at Joel Holka, Chris is at Chris Meaney, I'm at All In Kid. We'll be tweeting. If you have any lineup question advice in addition to this show, just hit us up on Twitter. We'll try to help you out as much as possible over the holidays. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Again, code podcast 10% off. Check out all the articles, all the advice, and all the greatness. That is our trio of, well, more so these two than me, but we're all great. We all love you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll see you later.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at www.thefantasyfootballers.com.